All right. So we are live. I don't think it's on the grad school panel that we have, but we can update them. Y'all can go ahead and get started. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to Black and Marine Science Week 2. This is the BIMS grad school panel. I'm Dr. Jeanette Davis. I am a marine microbiologist, children's science book author, and also the Chief Innovation Officer for Black and Marine Science, the nonprofit. And today's panel will be moderated by Imani Weber Schultz. So just to give you a bit of background about Imani, she is a first-year biology PhD student at the New Jersey Institute of Technology. She's interested in shark morphology and more specifically hopes to research shark scales for her dissertation. During her undergraduate career, she worked in paleoceanography. And outside of her research, Imani is a co-founder and the chief financial officer of Minorities in Shark Science, where she hopes to create a welcoming space and opportunities for women of color in shark science. With that, I'll pass it on to you, Imani.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be having this panel today. I am a first-year grad student, and I wish that I had some other Black grad students to ask these questions to when I was applying, and I think their answers will be equally useful to me as they will be to anyone else. So for this panel, I have some amazing panelists. They are all in grad school, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. We will start with Ashlyn Ford.
Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Ashlyn Ford. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at UCLA. I study ecology and evolutionary biology. My research currently assesses the health of marine ecosystems and evaluating how infectious diseases are impacting different aspects of marine communities. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. We are so excited to talk to you today. Next, we have Karina Fish.
Hi, I'm Karina. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of California, Davis, at the Marine Lab in Bodega Marine Laboratory. My work focuses on the California current system. I am a paleoceanographer and marine biogeochemist by training, and I work on the California current over the past 100 years, and so I get to work on deep sea corals and marine heat waves and how they all intersect together. Thanks for having me today.
Super cool. Next, we have Daryl Acker Carter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daryl Acker Carter, and I am a current master's student at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in the Marine Estuaries and Environmental Science program. And my current research is looking at evaluating the effectiveness of a new type of solar-powered and automated oyster gear in Baltimore Harbor.
That's so cool. And last, we have Demarcus Robinson.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Demarcus Robinson. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at UCLA in the Atmospheric and Oceanic Science Department, and I study oxygen minimum zones and also the association between keobacteria and sulfur oxidizing bacteria and the carpentaria sulfur. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to ask you all the questions that I have for you today. And at the end, we're going to be taking some questions from the audience. So if you have any, please feel free to ask them in the chat, and I'll make sure to ask them towards the end of the panel. So we have 4 core questions that I'm going to ask you. Please feel free to be as candid as you want. This is a safe space. Be honest, be open, share however much or however little you want to. So I'm going to start with Ashlyn, and we are going to go with the first question, which is, what are some challenges of being Black in grad school?
Okay, so I went in undergrad to an HBCU called Florida Agricultural Mechanical University, FAMU. And so I had an HBCU experience undergrad, and then I took a gap year, taught abroad, and then I'm currently in a PhD program here at UCLA. So the adjustment in itself was a little bit difficult, but I was blessed enough to have lab mates that were also from HBCUs prior. Currently, Tierra Moore and Camille Gaines were my lab mates, so they made sure to help me adjust to my first year here. And I think I mean, even with great support like that, I still had difficulties, of course, more particularly like gaslighting a little bit with some of the professors and dealing with like what is gaslighting, like what that entails and like how to like respond to it and not feel bad about like myself was really something I had to learn here, unfortunately. And then another thing I think would be too is dealing with cultural differences. I'm from the East Coast, and so coming from the East Coast to the West, I wasn't aware there was going to be a little bit of some challenge, or like how I like code switch is a little bit different here. Some people do it, some people don't. When I first came here, I thought I had to. Quickly learned that I didn't, and that I need to be my own authentic self, and take pride in it. So that was my difficulties.
Yeah, I did the complete opposite. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area and then did my undergrad, and I'm now doing my PhD in New Jersey, and it is very different on each coast, and it is quite an adjustment. I'm glad though that you have figured out how to be yourself and figured out where you kind of fit into everything, and I hope that it's getting better for you and that you're enjoying your time as a grad student on the odd coast.
Yes, it's definitely getting better.
All right, Karina?
I can relate to a lot of what Ashlyn said, although I went to a PWI instead of an HBCU for undergrad, and even still, the transition to a different PWI on the West Coast for graduate school was tough, especially at a marine lab, which is even more isolated from the main campus. So the Bodega Marine Laboratory is two hours away from main campus. So the built-in community that you might find from, say, an AFAM center or a affinity group that you might be able to plug into readily, that's not really there at a smaller offsite campus, or satellite campus rather. And so you have to be even more intentional about seeking out, spaces that are going to remind you a little bit more of home or a little bit more familiar with your culture and upbringing. So I'm in North Bay, and so Amani, you're from the Bay Area, and North Bay isn't really known for its color, and you have to be very intentional. So I used to drive to the city for, that's over 45 minutes away just to get some, some culture back
diversity.
into my life. Exactly, yeah. And so that was really hard for me for the first couple of years. But then I learned to grow my support network without having to find affinity groups locally. And so that just took time in terms of making sure you're developing and putting into those friendships and developing them into actual relationships that you want to cultivate. I can also relate to the part that Ashlyn mentioned about gaslighting. And so it's super hard. And I think it's more unique as a Black student to have to navigate that, especially. Thankfully, there are some lab members or former lab mates of mine that validated my experiences, and so it was really helpful to hear that. But that wasn't until I was already a third year graduate student, so it was pretty far in already. So yeah, I guess cultivating your support networks, even if they're not already built in, is I think something that's super challenging, but it's necessary in order to make it through the marathon that a PhD is.
Yeah, I think it's really important what you said about feeling that your feelings are valid and how your feeling is important and matters is super critical in grad school. I'm lucky enough that I have friends who, when I say how I'm feeling, they don't say to me, well, that's wrong of you to feel that way, or you shouldn't be feeling that way, or I'm sure that person didn't mean what they said to you in the way that they did. And it's really hard to figure out how to feel valid with how you're feeling. I think that was one of my biggest challenges. So I can definitely relate to needing that. Daryl.
Yeah, so my grad program is really unique in the fact that even prior to the pandemic, our courses were online, and the grad students are at different campuses across the state of Maryland. So it's really hard to connect with other students in general, on top of finding other Black students to connect with. You kind of just have to hope that there's another person of color in your class. If someone turns on their Zoom camera, to find those relationships. And a lot of what I have done is looking at my home institution, even though they may not be in my graduate program, but finding other graduate students of color just to interact with them. And then another challenge that I find myself reflecting on a lot is trying to get rid of that idea that just because I'm Black in marine science or Black in grad school, that I have to put in extra effort to be on the same level as my peers when I've already proven myself. And it's a constant internal battle to be like, am I doing enough or am I already doing enough?
Yeah, I would say that that's something that I'm definitely struggling with in my first semester of my PhD, just figuring out that I do belong here and the ideas that I have are unique and they're useful and they're important. So I'm glad to hear you say that. And last we have Demarcus.
My background is kind of similar to Ashlyn. Both I came with the Florida A&M University, came here for grad school, and so I guess my first year in grad school is pretty difficult. So you have the culture adjustment. So from Georgia, and so it's like Georgia is not like California, Atlanta is not like Los Angeles, and so that was a big adjustment for me, along with being at the time the only Black student in my department, and so you would get certain criticisms or people just stare at you and have different microaggressions that came with that. I think the biggest, and then also just not really understanding. So like one of the biggest things that people I guess found a problem was the fact that, let's say if I'm gonna do my work, I would go back to my office to do my work and do my work on holiday, go home. But people took that as I didn't want to be around them, something like that. I was like, no, back in undergrad, same thing. I got going, get my work. When it was time to do your work, you do whatever afterwards. And so that was a big issue in my first year. And so the ways I've kind of got over that was kind of having a support system. And so I connected with my mentor and now my friend, Dr. Grad, back at Florida A&M University, and we would talk pretty often about like how should I can you hear me now? How should I go about navigating this space along with trying to figure out along with trying to figure out how should I navigate the space along with helping me through this part of grad school, and that was a big support for me, along with connecting with my fraternity here. So those were my first year.
Can we have people who are not panelists mute themselves? I think that might. Thank you. Yeah, support system. I mean, I think that's probably the number one lesson that I've gotten from every single grad student that I've talked to is make sure that you have a good support system for all of your different needs. Having a support system for the research that you're doing, having a support system for the challenges that you're facing, just support, which is incredibly important in grad school, but also just in life in general. And I have to say there's a lot of people who I know who I think learned that later than they would have wanted to. And I'm really happy that I'm learning it so young so that I don't have to kind of struggle through that in the way that other people have. So our next question is, what self-care habits have you developed in grad school? So we just talked about challenges that you faced. What are things that you like to do that are self-care and that have helped you get through those challenges in grad school?
Go. I guess pre-COVID, not post-COVID, but currently. Pre-COVID, I definitely took self-care seriously from the beginning, just to make sure that I can separate myself from like work during research and then have like a separate thing to do to take my mind off of it. So I wouldn't be focused solely on research and burning myself out. And so I learned to go to like concerts. I love concerts. That brings me joy, like finding things that bring you joy. So concerts, going to like a spa, doing like a spa day once a quarter was my thing, pre-COVID. And currently now it's like drawing, going back to like things I did back in high school. So that I laid off on. So like reading books, drawing, painting, that is what brings me joy, that gives me peace. And I make sure also I don't bring work home. Like I do all my work here on campus. And then when I get home, I find something that I enjoy to take my mind off of it. And it helps tremendously.
So how do you, this is just a personal question. This is not one of the questions that I gave you, but how do you not take your work home? I feel like that's a thing that a lot of grad students struggle with.
I see, like I said, I cannot focus at home. So during pandemic era, it was very difficult for me to work at home. So luckily I instilled this my first year. I made sure that I have like a set plan. When I come into campus, I'm going to do like my proposal. That's all I'm going to focus on today. And I'm not leaving until it's done. So sometimes I would be here actually on campus until like 10 p.m. I'm a night owl. So like once the sun goes down, like my productivity is like off.
Same.
I'm just like, yes, let's go. Let's put some music on. Let's get this done. And that's worked for me so far. Some people like, going home early and working at home. Like I said, don't. And that's just my thing. And it's worked. I like it. I enjoy it.
That's awesome. I 2 weeks ago tried to see if I could do this PhD student life like a 9 to 5 and see what happens if I'm like extremely productive between 9 and 5 p.m. And some days it works really well, and other days I cannot get out of bed because I'm also a night person. And my most productive hours are like 7 to 2 a.m., which is the absolute worst times to be productive.
Yes. My advisor advised me not to do that. And I'm slowly working on doing better at that. But yeah, I'm a night owl. So I like wake up late and make it to campus maybe 10 or 11 and just go from there.
Yeah, understandable. I am all with you on that side. Karina, what self-care habits have you developed in grad school?
Yeah, I think they've changed over the years. The first year, I would make sure I had like group dinners with folks in my cohort, and it was really nice to get them, know them outside of the office space. And then the second year, I was driving into SF every single weekend to stay with my sister who had just moved there, and going swing dancing on Sundays. And then I got a dog my third year, and so she's in my self-care maintenance, accountability buddy since then. And so that requires me to be outside at least a couple hours per day, which is really nice. And depending on the season, that will shift. So right now it's the hour between 4 p.m. and 5:30. I'm always out with her because that's when the sun's still out, and the morning as well. And so just being flexible and reiterating or retooling as I need to with each season or with each different phase of grad school. So right now I'm writing from home every day. And so I never have to go into the lab or anything. And so I need that structure. And so again, creating those self-care habits that have accountability to some being, whether it's a person or, a pet of yours, and then making sure that's able to structure my day, since I don't really have any structure anymore that's externally put on to me anymore, that have been really helpful. And so I guess it's just been changing out throughout the years. And I really enjoyed the different phases because it's allowed me to do different things. So when I didn't have my dog, I would be able to tack on different small trips to, say, a conference or to a workshop. And I would take a few days to myself to go explore a different national park somewhere. So that was a nice way to make sure I'd always had a cushion on either end of a work-related travel event.
I just want to highlight, which I think is really important, that you said that your self-care habits have changed and that they're constantly evolving, because I think sometimes we think that our self-care habits have to work for us 100% of the time, and that should be the thing that we do, and that helps us be happy. And I think it's really important to point out that your self-care can change, and it's okay for it to change, and you should be trying to figure out other things that make you happy. and constantly evolving those so that they can keep benefiting you in the positive way that they do. Next we have Daryl.
So self-care is something new that I'm doing in grad school because it didn't happen during undergrad. And one conversation that I had with my brother actually is that when you're having or trying to establish new self-care practices, it should be completely separate from like the work that you do. And what was hard for me to figure out is that I like going on hikes, I like going near the water to practice self-care, but I was pushed to find something different as like a marine scientist that's still connected to your work in some way, shape, or form. So finding like a new self-care practice is really difficult. But I decided to pick up the bass guitar, learn something different, try something new. I've been going to a bunch of more concerts, have some coming up in a few weeks. Really disconnecting from like environmentalism, like science as a whole, and like find something completely different to invest my time in. It's something I'm excited to do as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. In my undergrad, I did rock climbing as a self-care kind of habit. It helped a lot with my depression, and I still do it in grad school. And I also hang out with my friends a ton. And I feel like maybe the friend thing only works as a ton because none of them are academics. And so there's absolutely no point at which we could start talking about school because they don't have anything to say since none of them are in academia. And it's kind of nice that there's no point at which that could come up and I might start thinking about, oh, I have this grant due, or oh, this sentence in this one grant that I wrote needs to be edited right now. So self-care is really important. And last we have Demarcus.
So my first year, I didn't really have self-care. It was just straight work. And so for me, I just wanted to, just try to be great along with trying to deal with all the stuff that was happening my first year. But over time, I could start to realize like I need to get back to what I used to do. So like the top two things that I enjoy doing was community service and playing in the band. And so with community service, I started to do things like my second year for my birthday, I went out and passed out like these goodie bags for the homeless. So that just makes me feel good. And over time started like, oh, well, what are other things that I can do? Because I tried to do the whole, only do your work on campus, but that just didn't work out for me. And then I like to stay up pretty late and then also do more. It was, and I had a weird schedule. So like, I just couldn't get it together. So I was like, okay, well, I've just learned that, I'm end up taking my work home probably, and I'm okay with that. But the things that I started to do was like on Friday night, if there's a movie out, I'll go to the movies up the street and just go watch a movie, and that's it. Started doing that, and then recently I told myself that the happiest I've really been was when I was. I'm happy now, but like the happiest, like the peak of it was when I was playing music. I was in a band, played percussion. I enjoyed being part of different symphonies and concert bands and things like that. And I haven't played in about 2 years. So I was like, you know what, I should just get back into it. And so I started ordering some sticks and some other percussion equipment. And I was like, okay, well, if I really want to get back into it, then how should I do it? And I was like, well, first I'm gonna start with whatever the stuff they have on campus in terms of like concert band and music and things like that, and start to venture out and start doing other things. And so that's kind of one of my things that I'm trying to get back into, and I think it will work. You just gotta figure out how I'm going to incorporate the time to practice and do that. But I think it'll work out because at this point, I don't have any classes that I have to take, and just straight writing and research. So that's kind of how I've developed self-care over time. So I didn't start off as an initial boom, I'm gonna do this to take care of myself and gradually.
Cool. I'm sure that will work out for you, especially since it's something that you want to happen. I think that from all four of your answers, another really valuable thing to take from it is that we all have very different schedules, and whatever works for you is the schedule that is good for you, and that's what you should do. You should not be trying to conform to other people's schedules or what you think is the right way of doing something. If something works really well for you, and if that is working between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., if you can do that, go ahead and do that. But if you are not a night person and you're a morning person, then get up and be the first one in the office, whatever works for you. So my next question is, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And what have you done to hype yourself up and convince yourself that you belong and are valuable and have great ideas? And we can start with Ashlyn.
Okay, so that's a tough question. Let's see. I would say I honestly didn't really feel imposter syndrome until maybe towards the mid part of my first year. And that was just because I was coming in to my program without like having research already started. I had people in my cohort who were currently working on projects, already had papers being published, things like that nature. And so I was really feeling like I was behind at a certain point. And so saying it now, like bearing it, like all that nervousness and just sadness really wasn't healthy at all. And luckily I started going to like therapy, talking to my friends about how I was feeling. And like, they really helped me see how, you know, bad it was and how unhealthy it was. And they kept encouraging me, talking to me. And I started talking to my cohort about how I was kind of feeling too. And they also were, what I actually realized, we're going through the same thing of feeling like, oh, we're behind on this, this, and this. And I come to realize that we all have these mutual feelings and that it's okay. Each journey is going to be different. And you just, you know, continue on through the program. And eventually we all end up hopefully in, you know, endpoint, which is getting a PhD degree. So I was luckily enough able to talk to my friends about that. And then also I joined BIMS, Black Women in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And they also encouraged me to, and I voiced concerns about things in my program, and they've been helpful with that. Woke Space is another organization that I'm in as well, and BIMS. So I found
Surprise.
people. I found my people. I found community which understood what I was going through, and they really helped me understand like what I need to do in terms of like taking care of myself and when to voice concerns and that nature. So that's how I kind of beat it, because I'm currently more confident than I probably was in my first year, and I'm happy where I am right now.
That's great. I'm happy that you kind of found a way to get around it and are feeling really good about where you are right now.
Yeah.
Karina?
I think again, my answer is going to be, it depends on the phase that I'm in. And so early on, I had a really bad GPA from undergrad, and my imposter syndrome was already centered around that. And so dealing with that, I plugged into my research, and I just, you know, said, okay, maybe my grades from undergrad aren't great, but I will plug into my research, and that will be the spot where I'm shining. So like pivoting to the parts that you are good at and you do get some feelings of confidence from, and trying to not downplay or ignore, but trying to put aside the part that's bringing you down mentally. To overcome that, I finally got some external validation in the forms of some awards. And for that, my advice would just be apply, apply, apply. I applied for the awards I got 3 times, for one of them 3 times, and one of them for twice before I got them. And I think for that, it's really helpful for the iteration process when you're getting other people to look and edit your paper or your statements. And that helps you validate your ideas. Like, oh, your ideas are great. Maybe just tweak this one thing here. And then you're constantly going back and forth with other folks and getting feedback to really craft this really strong statement. And so that also helped build my confidence. So now my answer is I like write applications when I want to boost my confidence, because I love submitting things and getting feedback on something and iterating with people. And then, you know, it's a cherry on the top if I actually get it, but it's just that process of like, because I submitted something back in August and I haven't heard back from it yet, but the process of co-generating ideas with somebody else was super helpful, because they're a humanities major, PhD candidate. And even though they're very different field than I'm in, having that somebody as a sounding board to bounce ideas off of, and just boosting that confidence, like, oh, even though I don't specialize in, say, it's social studies, I'm still able to put forth an idea that sparks interest from somebody who does. So yeah, I think just putting your ideas out there is scary, but once you do, you get some incredible feedback. And even if the feedback is like, hey, you can improve on this, that's still very constructive and you can work on it or find something. So now my imposter syndrome is more around like not having a first author paper out. So I'm diligently trying to like get something out on that end. But when I'm feeling pretty low, you can look back on saying your CV, or if you journal on your journaling and see what you've done and you have accomplished, or if maybe you're not like a journaling type or you don't update your CV that often, you can turn to your community and your support network again, and they can remind you of how great you are. Because I think my tendency is similar to most people, where you kind of forget everything that you've been able to do and accomplish. And so again, by talking with other people, they can remind you that no, you're worth it, you got it. You just have to like have a little bit more perseverance and you're almost there. So I think, again, your support network and then making sure you reflect on your accomplishments is super helpful.
Yeah, one of my ways of just dealing with my own kind of self-confidence is I think about what 10-year-old Amani would think of 23-year-old Amani. And I'm always like, dude, she would think that you're sick. She'd be like, this girl works with sharks. That's crazy. This girl's doing research with blah, blah, blah. That's freaking awesome. Because I don't know, that just gives me like a confidence boost, because I know when I was 10 and I would look up to scientists or just people in a career, I'd be like, wow, that person's so cool. Wow, that person's accomplishing so many things. And now it's like, well, here I am. If I was 10 and I was looking at myself, I'd be like, yeah, she's cool. Definitely. Daryl?
Yeah, so my imposter syndrome comes at really random times now, but within the first like month or half, if I started grad school, I would get into like class, and then my peers will say something like really intellectual that I could not follow. And I'm like, okay, I don't think it was the right program. I don't think this was for me. But then I remember a tweet specifically from Dr. T.R. Moore that she tweeted last year, talking about imposter syndrome and how like she knew that the stuff that she did was impressive. And so it's a matter of like, yeah, I did that. No one else did that. I'm awesome for doing that. And just reflecting and knowing you've already proven yourself. If they didn't want you here, they wouldn't have accepted you to the program. They wouldn't have funded you for this program. You've taken every step to be here, and you should be proud of that. And sometimes you just have to like take a look at your CV. That's what I do sometimes. Like, yeah, this is pretty cool. For someone who never knew anything about science, didn't like science before, and now I'm be able to be in like a funded master's program. It's really nice to have and go back and reflect.
Demarcus?
So I guess how I dealt with it was it's kind of yeah. So how I dealt with it, I guess it can be perceived as kind of being a little arrogant. I'm not an arrogant person. I'm very humble, but in this case, I'll take it as that. So so first off, I had started writing out notes, and so these notes I would write out. I was like, well, I realized that there's stuff that I don't know, right? So I'll write out, what do I need to know? In what class do I need to take it from, or where do I need to get this knowledge from? And then what is the timeline do I need to learn it? So a lot of stuff I needed to learn, aside from the stuff that I was a little bit behind on, I kind of needed to know before the end of my first year, because we had a research cruise at the start of pretty much the next year, that fall. So the whole summer we're preparing. So it was like I needed to catch up really fast. And so I wrote out a list of notes. It was like, hey, I need to learn this, that, and third, from everything from ocean biology or chemistry to geomicrobiology and microbes and all this cool stuff. And from that, by the end of that month, so let's say I have to make this list in January, by the end of May, I started check off like, what do I know now? What do I need to go forward? So that was like part one. And then part two was, it was how I kind of overcame it. And was that there was people in my department that knew certain things, and there's things that I knew that they didn't know. And so this is where the arrogant part would come in, where, I would mention something that I knew that they didn't know, just to say, oh, well, now I know that I know this topic. So if somebody asks me, or if somebody mentions like, hey, what do you do? Or, what's going on? How's it going? I was like, oh yeah, it's out and collect samples, and when they go and do this card fish and sulfate reduction, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what? And then they'll explain what they do, and I'm like, what? And so at those 2 points, I realized, well, I know something that he doesn't know, and then that person knows something that I don't know. And so over time, I realized, well, in this department, in this, but even within the research groups, I realized there's things that I'm a little bit more knowledgeable about, and I could probably teach somebody or let somebody know. So over time, I was like, okay, I've become more confident in terms of what I know. And so that's kind of how I slowly got over it. It was really at the base was really making that checklist of like, this is what I need to know and whatnot. So that's how I got over it.
Yeah, I constantly tell myself that I have big brain energy and there's like a ton of things in my head that I know that I don't remember that I know. And then I'll be having a conversation with someone. I'm like, wait, you know that? That's so cool. You just shared this super cool fact with someone that you forgot you knew. And that's like, I feel like that's helped me a lot with questioning if I actually know anything. That and just knowing that I can't be an expert in everything. And there's always going to be someone who knows more than I do, but as long as I keep learning in the area that I want to learn and I keep asking questions to people who know areas that I don't, then that's really all the best that I can do. And I'm perfectly happy with that. So our last question, which is the one I was looking forward to, which is what is your advice to new Black grad students who are just starting out?
I would say the one thing that I took in coming into my PhD program was knowing what I love to do. And I think that to me is what's keeping me going right now. So prior to your graduate school experience, my mentors always asked me, what exactly do you want to do and why? And so for me, that's like infectious diseases and coral reefs. And I love that field. I absolutely wouldn't mind working in it for the rest of my life. And I think that when you go into grad school, you need to have somewhat of that mindset because there's going to be high days where you're doing great. And then there's also going to be very low days too, where you may be struggling and you need to have an anchor to basically keep you together. And so my love for my field is what's anchoring me and what's pushing me forward. So I think do what you love and don't be discouraged from like whatever people say, or it's like, it's not important. What does this have to do with like humans, things of that nature? Do what you love and the rest is fine. You don't even worry about it. So that's all I got to say on that. Stay strong out there, and make sure you have support to help you along this journey, because this journey is long and hard, but it's worth it in the end. That's what I think personally.
I love all of that advice. Karina?
I want to echo a lot of what Ashlyn said. I had a really hard time reconciling my passion with what I signed up to do in grad school. And it wasn't until I think my second year that I actually identified the way I would be able to overlap the two. So my passion is, helping the Black community at home, and my work is marine biogeochemistry. And so I was like, okay, how do I reconcile the two of those? And it's through environmental justice. And it wasn't until this past year that I was actually able to finally partner with a community organization in the Bay Area that works on contaminants that are being remobilized due to sea level rise. And so I'm now analyzing those contaminants in this water, in like the estuary water and in the sediments. And that's, for me, the crux of my passion with my work. And that's really driving me to the point where I'm like, okay, I actually want to do this for the long haul. I want to become like a tenured professor working on these type of issues. So yeah, I would say it's hard to sometimes keep chugging along, but if you have the actual goal that's really actually motivating you from within rather than external validation or external motivation, it's going to really help you get through those hard spots. I think the other thing that's really helped me was, I know mental health is being destigmatized, and it's really great that everyone's really embracing it. When I started seeing my therapist at my university, I can attest how much she really helped me in terms of really helping me just have better frameworks to viewing things or to working through some issues. And that's been really great. So being open to professional help for whatever part of your life that you're working on, whether that's personal or research related or whatever. And then taking advantage of opportunities that seem like side projects at the time, but could develop into a dissertation chapter, could develop into a new collaboration for a postdoc, could develop into a class that you help lead. So all those three things I've actually done thanks to a side project of mine really taking over and like blossoming into one of these really cool endeavors. So there's always a time to say no, but there's also a time to say yes. So that's probably the hardest lesson to learn, is figuring out when to say no, because you need to protect your time, and also when to say yes to like things that can lead you to really cool places. So that's a hard balance, obviously, but you can also engage with what some folks call a no committee. I just learned this recently from a friend of mine. And you get two other people who are familiar enough with your work and who you are as a person. And so with each opportunity, you're able to ask them, hey, no committee, should I be saying no or yes to this? And you can give them your pros and cons for why you should be, saying yes or no to something. But at the end of the day, if they know that you have a long-term goal that you need to be working towards, and that's not going to help you get there, they can say, nope, we veto that, say no to it, and help you, balance that no and yes decision-making.
I need to go get me a no committee. That's the biggest lesson I'm getting out of this right now. Daryl?
So I think something important to note is that it's okay to define your relationships and acknowledge that your advisor is not always your mentor, and that those are two different things. Because a mentor is someone who's going to advocate for you. It's a mutual relationship. You're both going to get something beneficial out of it. But an advisor, and I'm sure anyone who's a grad student can tell you that might not always be the case. I've seen my friends get crashed and burned by their advisors on multiple occasions. But when you sit down with your advisor the first time or the first couple of weeks, you can define that relationship like, hey, here's what I'm looking, an advisor, potentially a mentor, and look to get out of this relationship. And your advisor can do the same thing. And you can build that positive relationship and trust with each other, because you're going to want someone at the university, faculty, to advocate for you when things do occur. And I think, especially being Black in these academic white spaces, you always want someone to have your back when you're dealing with different things.
Yeah, definitely. And Demarcus?
I guess I would say is picking off what Daryl said, having a mentor. It could be somebody at the university or even somebody outside. And so that could be like connecting with the old faculty members at your undergrad that you got close with or something like that. And so why this is important is because there are certain things where, well, in academia, there's no handbook that they give to you. Here's all the rules to grad school. Here's all the rules to being a professor. A lot of stuff is kind of more so, it's like a secret code. Like even if you ask for it, you may not even get all the details. So having somebody where you can just ask them all these questions and get the correct information, along with trying to go through grad school. What are the things you're supposed to do opposed to what other people are doing? Because a lot of things you can get yourself caught up in, oh, well, so-and-so just did this. And then you realize what they just did was wrong, and you should have done these steps first. Having those mentors, having those guidance persons is very important when it comes to grad school. And then on top of that, if that mentor you have other interests that's outside of your research, that's a really great avenue to explore different things other than your research, right? So you can have that difference between what you do in the lab or on the computer versus what you'd like to do outside of that, either it's advocacy or something like.
Cool. So we have 2 questions that were asked from YouTube that I'll ask you, and you can just, if you want to answer them, go ahead. I won't require that you all 4 of you answer, although I'm sure the people on YouTube would love to hear all of your answers for them. So the first one is, are you often asked by your department or peers to speak about diversity or inclusion issues? If so, how and when do you draw the line?
I can go on that one. So last year there were things that were happening in the department, and I was asked to not just me, but other Black grad students in our department were asked to do numerous things, numerous talks, meetings with our peers, with the department itself. And so during that time, I at first was encouraged to do it, and I was happy to do it because I felt like finally our voices and concerns were being addressed. But as time continuously went on, I had to deal with saying no, and realizing that despite talking to people in the department, sometimes things weren't clear or they disregarded what we had to say. And so from that, I had to learn how to say no, and then also how to put my foot down and voice my concerns about what was happening. And ultimately, the Black grad students in our department sent out a letter. And from that, we were able to create a committee. And I was a part of the committee for that year. And I think hopefully the things that we did within that will come to light. Some have, some haven't. But ultimately it's up to you, what you want to do, what energy you have personally before signing up to do these things. I didn't realize how much energy and time it was going to take last year to do all that I wanted to do, because I wanted to improve my department for Black grad students. That was the overall idea that I had in mind. And somewhere along the line, I got kind of discouraged, but ultimately, in the end, I tried my best. I tried my best. But coming forward this year, I decided to step back because it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with, and no one really tells you how to go about it. No one really tells you what you need to do. It's you shouldn't basically be in charge of this. This should be a group effort, not just one or two students telling the department basically what to do. So I think that is something that ultimately has to be what you want to do, and don't be afraid to say no.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Do you three have anything that you want to add to that?
I'll add to that. So I guess similar to Ashlyn last year, pretty much because of the murder of George Floyd, a lot of these universities came out and a lot of these departments came out and said, hey, we need to write diversity statements. So a lot of the diversity and inclusion stuff I kind of got excluded from. And I don't know if that was just because they were just being sensitive and empathetic to the topic. But I jumped in, I was like, hey, I got something to say. And essentially I told so we had a Zoom meeting, I told my department if they aren't gonna write a statement as it relates to what's happening and also the things that's happening to the department, they should shut up and not do nothing at all. So I kind of felt a little bit bad afterwards, but then over time I was like, well, it's kind of deserved. And then when it came down to being on the diversity, equity, inclusion committee, at first I had denied it because I was like, well, just like what Ashlyn was saying, it takes a lot of work to the point where you would need to hire somebody to do the amount of work that's needed. And
Yep.
I was just like, I don't want to know. I came here to do a job, and that's what I came to do. But at the same time, it was like, you can't criticize the system if you're not actively trying to fix it in a way. So it was just this two, and it's something I'm still dealing with. And so it was just these two things that were kind of going at each other. Eventually I kind of was like, you know what, let me just try it, right? So I jumped on and I was like, let me be on this committee for this year. And I'm seeing things where it was like, yeah, it may not be long term for me, because there's something you want to do and you know how you want to go about it. Just because you are from a certain community doesn't mean that you know everything, right? But you empathize and you bring up solutions, even things that's like, it makes sense, right? Just do this, do that, and third. Along with being connected with students and having this committee for grad students and professors. But you realize there are certain people who think of diversity efforts on the surface level, and it's for them, and sometimes it's not even intentional. It's literally their idea of this is what diversity is. It's completely different from what you think. And so you kind of are not only tackling trying to, fix the department, but at the same time you're trying to kind of change somebody's mindset in a way, or but something more than the surface level. And so it becomes a thing where it's like, how much time do you want to put in yourself into it? If you really want to do that, just know that it is a lot of work, and it's an uphill battle, but it's rewarding. And I think for me, I don't, and around currently there's 2 Black students in my department. I don't want them to ever feel how I felt my first year. So that's why also another reason I was like, I'm gonna just jump on. But if there's things that I couldn't get done, or there's things where it's just problem because of politics or whatever, I will let them know. But at the same time, I was like, hey, if you want to, it's your choice, but just know that it's a bad.
Yeah, I love what you said about the, they can hire an outside party in order to actually, who are trained in the work and who actually do it, because you're putting resources behind it. And so oftentimes, if I know that a committee is putting resources behind something, behind an initiative, behind whatever they're saying they're actually trying to do, then I don't mind, partaking and giving them some, I don't know, work or labor on my behalf as well. I think the hard part is when they're not putting the resources behind it and they're still asking for your time. At that point, I typically utilize allies and have them be my mouthpiece if I really do have something to say, but I don't want to have to deal with all the emotional work that goes with, or investment rather, in terms of going and like showing up for the committee meetings and having to basically defend our humanity and whatnot. And so at that point, I tell a trusted ally of mine like what my talking points are, and then I have them like work on my behalf basically and be my mouthpiece. The other option I sometimes do is I have a one-on-one meeting for like 20 minutes to 30 minutes with the person in charge, because I find they're less defensive that way if it's just one-on-one. And it's, you have to like coax their egos and say what a great job they're doing and whatnot. So it's pretty Machiavellian that way in terms of by any means necessary, getting to the goal what you want, which is for them to address something a little bit differently. So I'll give an example. There was a workshop for my department it was billed as an anti-Blackness workshop in terms of how to make sure that's not in our department culture, and yet they weren't addressing colorism at all. And so I was like, you can't really have that as your stated goal and not address the elephant in the room. And so I was like, just putting that out there that this is not, if this is your intention, you really need to, put the metal where it needs to be. So pointing out small things like that. And even if it's not like that particular iteration that gets done, planting that seed for them to really marinate on and to say, hey, there are critiques of the ways that you're going about doing something, I think is important to let them know that people are not going to just say, oh, you're doing a great job, like keep going the way you're doing. So yeah, I guess being very selective with where you're putting your energy and being able to pick and choose where you think you're going to be most effective. Because again, at the end of the day, like Demarcus said, you're there to get your PhD or you're there to get your degree. They're not paying you to do all this DEI work. And if they really cared about something, they would put resources behind it and they would hire an outside party. Or, the universities have a whole other half of the university that's dedicated to social sciences and dedicated to humanities, right? They could partner with or write a grant for or collaborate with the other half of the university, right? And so I think those are the types of things where I like to point out to them, committees that don't really have any teeth yet, what they can be doing to really combine or interweave their quoted or stated objective and mission with their actual practice of things without wasting my time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. So we've reached the end of our time for this panel. I just want to thank you for being as honest as you were with the questions that I asked. I really enjoyed chatting with you and hearing all of your answers and your insights. For the audience, thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to follow the 4 panelists, you can follow them on their social media accounts. You can follow Demarcus Robinson on Instagram at Black Ocean Scientist, and on Twitter, and on Twitter at @GoDemarcus_. You can follow Ashlyn at Curious Ashlyn on Instagram and Twitter, Curious_Ashlyn, sorry. And you can follow Daryl at Dacker105 on Instagram and Twitter. And then Karina on Twitter at Karina_fish.
Thanks, guys. That was so amazing. This was like such an amazing panel. Like, I literally was texting with Dr. Tiara Moore, like, oh my God, I'm in tears. This is so beautiful. Great panel, great advice, great discussion. And I was looking up this quote that I kind of live by. I want to share this with you guys because I think you embodied this on the panel. It's by B.B. King. And it's the beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take that away from you. And what you guys just said was like, we lit and there's nothing anyone can do about it. So despite all of the things that you're going through, like, it's so beautiful that you're showing up to be honest, to be transparent. And this is what Black and Marine Science is all about, ensuring that you do have a network, that you are empowered, that you do feel like you can speak your truth. So remember that no one can take your learning away from you, and great job to the panelists. Before we end though, we do want to just quickly, we're giving away a BIMS membership today, a giveaway. And for the BIMS membership, you essentially have access to a lot of different internships, paid, they're all paid, whether they're internship, whether they're speaking engagements, and you have a network. You also get your awesome BIMS t-shirt, which comes in a biodegradable bag, all types of goodies. So we are giving away a BIMS membership, and the way you can win that BIMS membership is by answering this question on the YouTube channel. So there are 7 founding Black and Marine Science members, and 4 of us attended the same school. And it is a historically Black college university. And we want to know if anyone who is watching in today can name that school, and you will get a free BIMS membership. So I think Tiara is monitoring the chat, and we'll see what comes through. I don't have the music that they have on the Jeopardy game, but let's just pretend.
I got you. Da, na, 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 na.
And it's so interesting because the chair of that particular department just popped up on the screen. So that is kind of like a giveaway.
Well, that's if they know who I am, where I am. Oops, sorry.
I don't see any answers in the chat yet.
Oh, but I do see a joke that we ain't gonna tolerate. A joke that's not funny.
Morgan State. I see Morgan State. That's not correct. Sorry. Spellman is not correct. No.
Not Morgan State. One hint is that the color.
Oh, somebody got it. Adrian Taylor. Adrian, please send an email to info@bims.org and we will get your stuff sent to you. I'm putting it in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Adrian Taylor. So the answer to that is Hampton University, our home by the sea, literally the home by the sea. The standard of excellence is where 4 of the founding BIMS members attended, in historically Black college university. But thank you again, everyone, for all of your time, and have a great day.